We are live. Thank you everyone for joining us. We are here September 19th of the NDILC Principle number 9, Prepare for the Future. I'm super excited. We have two new guests, first time ever on the NDILC Principle. That is Sharron Levine and also Lynette Keyowski. So we are now all of North America. Think about that. We've got Canada with 7 or 8 different representations on there. She heads up the managing partner for Reach Canada, and Sharron Levine, who was with FHFA formerly, had been in the business almost 40 years as a lawyer. I'm super excited to have this everyone on the call today. And then we have, it's because of the dynamics, I want to dig right into it with Chitra. You're hosting number 9 Principle, Prepare for the Future. Take it away.
Good day, everyone. Thank you, Desiree. I'm so excited to be hosting this month's Leadership Principle, Prepare for the Future. Before we get into it, a special welcome to Lynette and Sharron. So glad that you can be with us, because I'm going to do something new. I always like to shake it up. I think we are doing this 3rd year in the running, right, Desiree? So we came together as a team, the NDILC members, and we crafted these principles, the core foundation of what it takes to be a strong leader in the modern world today. And the first year, we all had an open discussion. And the 2nd year, we started pulling in outside information in terms of YouTube, videos and blog posts. And today I thought I'll shake this up even more and bring in a special guest. So are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. And I think I bet none of you would have imagined that who is going to be our special guest. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
So today's our very special guest is ChatGPT, the generative AI which has shaken up the entire globe. So those of you who are not with us in this meeting room, but tuning in and from any part of the world, this is such an iconic moment in our webinar series that we have AI participating as a co-panelist. What do you guys think?
I love it. I think it's brilliant. I was trying to think, is she bringing a child? Is she bringing a computer? Love it.
Yeah, I thought I wanted to keep you guys guessing. I'm so super thrilled. I invited, as you know, just so that if it would have been hard to miss the kind of global splash ChatGPT had. So I'm going to say it often so that just to keep it non-gender. So OpenGPT, just to give you a little bit of the influence that has had within 2 months of being launched in last November of 2022, OpenGPT reached more than 100 million monthly active users. And just for comparison, TikTok, another globally popular consumer application app, took about 9 months, and Instagram took about 2.5 years. So you can imagine the influence and the mind-bending potential OpenGPT has brought into our lives. So we are so thrilled that we have today with us. And I already did a welcome message. So just so that you can see. So I said, welcome to the NDILC Leadership Live Streaming Session. So OpenGPT says, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be part of the NDILC Leadership Live Streaming Session. It's an honor to join you all to discuss leadership and share insights. Let's make this session insightful and inspiring. So now that we have welcomed OpenGPT, I thought we would organize our today's discussion in a very innovative fashion. So as I invite each and every one of you, you can actually pose your question, what you might want to ask OpenGPT, either reflecting the way you think about today's topic, which is prepare for the future. It's just so relevant and so emblematic, right? Symbolic of the topic we are talking about. So we can ask questions, and what we can look at what OpenGPT has to say, and we can draw on our reflections, whether we agree, disagree, or we can have a conversation around what OpenGPT says. Are you game for that? Yes. Marty says yes. So this nothing is off limits here. I thought I'll start with a joke from OpenGPT, just so that to get us going. So I am going to ask, tell us a joke about leadership and preparing for the future. So why did the leader bring a crystal ball to the leadership conference? Because they wanted to see into the clear future of the organization. So I'm going to just, I have played with it, obviously. I have actually asked serious questions. I do this, I use this as part of my research for changing care management for the elderly aging population, especially those living with dementia. So it has been a fantastic tool in terms of expanding my imagination for the future. So Desiree, go for it. What would you like? I would like to invite your thoughts on preparing for the future. We have discussed it multiple times, but what has changed since we last approached this principle, talked about it? And you're welcome to invite OpenGPT to your conversation.
Well, I think the idea is that, the change for me is really been everything that we've done in the past is evolving. It's all fluid. So the idea is that we used to always say, well, this is how we did it yesterday, so we're going to do it this way tomorrow. And the idea is that moving forward, everything that I've known for my entire life is up in impact of change. So the disruption is no longer something for me to say there's a disruptor. It's everything is moving so quickly. So for me, what keeps me up at night moving forward to ask ChatGPT is that, the navigation of all these different things that are running around in the world, for the verticals of real estate, the verticals of climate, the verticals of healthcare, the verticals of economics, all these different verticals are being integrated. And so for me, the difference of change as we go into the future is the adoption is being really hard to accept for a lot of people because of different dynamics, how you were and I were as children versus the younger generation, how they're being brought up. So my question, to keep it simple with everyone on, is how do we look for the future? How do we prepare for the future when it's constantly evolving? I think that's the key is that how do we break it down to where we not only just take one day at a time, but how do we really look at what the dynamics are going to be as the dynamics are actually being played out and developed through, information that's going back to the history of time, like we see what's going on now, versus the future, and how does that merge together?
Hey, anyone care to follow up?
Well, I can share that, I was asked to write an article at my former firm, and I thought I'm going to enter in the question and see what it comes up with, is just to get me going, because I'm quite often writing that's that getting started thing that's the hardest. And I entered in what are the advantages of hiring a philanthropic advisor. And the article that came out, I was like, oh my God. There's nothing I would need to change. It was exactly what I would want to say. So then, I went in and made it my own. But the conflict in my head, using it, I sort of felt like I was cheating, because it made it so easy that I felt like, this feels a little uncomfortable. But I actually entered a similar question, but very similar, to see what came out, because I thought, is it regurgitating the same exact thing every time? But it didn't. So so that's been my only exposure to it, which I shared with my daughter, who's gets paid to write. You know, her job is to write for Runner's World and Self Magazine and Hoka Shoes. That's what she gets paid to do. And I said, is this a concern to you? And she goes, absolutely. You know, this is a threat to creativity on some level, and you know, those type of jobs, which makes me sad because we don't want to lose creativity in the world. And then the third thing that my exposure to this was that there was a story about, I guess there's kind of a group of people who write subplots for some, you know, classic kind of stories like Star Wars or the sci-fi kind of stuff. And they were angered because they were seeing the ChatGPT take all of their writings and use them. And so then they started writing things that were incorrect to jack it all up. And so I thought, I never thought about that either. Like ChatGPT is pulling whatever it's finding.
Correct, yes.
But it doesn't, there's no validator to say what they're pulling is correct. So anyway, that's been my exposure that I found fascinating.
Thanks for sharing, Marty. What you described, actually, there were 3 important points right there in relation to today's topic, preparing for the future, right? Given the relentless pace with which the technology is advancing and the adoption of it we are seeing, part of preparing for the future is to keep up with it and building the skills and the knowledge to embracing the new advances in a responsible manner. So I was glad that you actually tried it out and you had a first-hand experience of how it is. But with the relentless advance, and also brings forward what you termed as threat to the writers. That is a palpable, the other side of the benefit of ChatGPT. There are people, one of my own mentors mentioned a use case, said, this is amazing. I am an immigrant, so writing a blog doesn't come naturally to me. So to get me started, I rely on ChatGPT on any topic in the world, and it gives me a draft which I can take it and make it my own. That's one end of the spectrum of how writing is now being tremendously influenced by open ChatGPT, and the other side is what your writer-daughter is saying, which is a very, very realistic threat, and how the economics, how the profession will have to adapt to the existence of this. Now, remember, now we have brought in a new panelist altogether, right? Today it's a first time of a digital panelist in our webinar series. So it is, I think, so that's why responsible AI is very important, how we use it and how do we put the safeguards in place that we don't see this technology being misdirected to all the wrong purposes.
Yeah, Chitra, because right now on this call, we have now another guest invited, a virtual guest, right? A technology guest. But how we prepare for the future, to me, it's knowledge is power. We have to always continue to hone our craft, whatever industry we are, and keep up with the data, the trends, the reports, and really be that subject matter expert in whatever industry you're in. Having tools like ChatGPT, it's fantastic because then you had added content, added a tool. It's a tool, but it's not going to take away from you are the author of whatever you're creating in whatever industry you are. So you have to use it as a tool, as a guide. For example, my writing may not be the best. My first language was Spanish. I love Grammarly because they're like, oh, you use passive voice. I was like, oh. So we use it as a tool to improve ourselves. ChatGPT is a tool to improve maybe a different train of thought, just to what Marty had mentioned, or another point of view, but we can't rely on it 100% because then it takes away from our authenticity and who we are. But it's a great tool. I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I have this when I was in school? But I mean, it's just a great enhancement, but we are our own, we create our own future. And so we just have to have that knowledge as power and keep at it, because like everything else is a muscle. We have to be better at it and keep up with our industry. And God knows it's moving in nanoseconds, like to Desiree's point, especially with the pandemic. I mean, technology is going so rapidly. We take the best out of it and make it our own to create that better future. I know I use reports all the time, analytics, podcasts. I'm looking for resources, looking for other reports that will make me better. So this is just one of those resources that we use, and we take the good and make it better for us.
So that raises a question for me. Can you hear me? I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah. So the point that Vanessa makes about using it as a tool to improve and enhance our work calls into question, I guess, what are the standards that people are going to be applying to determine what level of authenticity there is, right? How are the original thoughts, because if you think about critical thinking to me means that you're originally thinking about something, not necessarily pulling it from the internet and then thinking about it according to how the internet is or ChatGPT is presenting it. And so that raises a question, do we need to have self-imposed standards that will prohibit us from actually appropriating work that is original and then just modifying it to make it our own? It's interesting. So in the context of religion, the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, just were Saturday and Sunday, and our rabbi in services started out speaking about his retirement. He's on the verge of retiring, and he said, well, this is what I started out with. And he read something about retiring and what you should say, what are the proper catchphrases and blah, blah, blah. And he says, but I'm not going to use it because this came from ChatGPT. And if you know the person, you know that would not have been what he would have written, right? His original thought. So if you know the person, it's one thing. If you don't know the person, which is obviously the larger body of people that we're talking about, vis-a-vis individuals and professionals and experts, you're not going to be able to sift through whether the originality is authentic, whether the authentic is actually authentic, versus, well, what is that personal, where's the dichotomy between originality and what ChatGPT presents to you as a starting point? I think it has the potential to water down our ability to develop critical thinking skills. I'm not saying it's not a tool and it won't enhance, but if improperly used, I think it has the potential to be detrimental on the one hand. On the other, obviously, it provides avenues and channels and vehicles for people to improve whatever it is that they're writing or speaking about.
Sharron, I agree with you. I mean, it feels like you read my mind a little bit on the original thought, commentary. I guess I look at it slightly differently. I think we've always struggled with identifying whether somebody's thought is original or if they've borrowed it from someone else, even before the advent of the internet, right? Is this your original thought, or are you opining over something somebody else created? Maybe putting a unique spin on it, or maybe just regurgitating it because it's from a source that I don't know, right? And I think really what we're looking at in terms of ChatGPT, because it is providing at rapid speed an ability to serve that up to us in a pace and in a way that is like unprecedented, right? Chitra put the question and the joke in the chat box, and it spits the answer out immediately. I've used it to play around a little bit in terms of creating content, and it looks really great, but clearly it's not original thought. It is, I think, two things. Number one, it's a regurgitation of and an amalgamation of potentially a lot of other people's original thoughts. That might become something that seems original, but it's really pieced together something that's already happened. And I think, so what we're seeing is two things: an acceleration of the ability to bring all of that to the fore. But I do feel that, you know, in the context of this question of preparing for the future, right?
Yep.
How are we preparing for the future? I think as humans, we've always prepared for the future, partly by looking in the rearview mirror, right? We've tried to learn from our mistakes or learn from our past experiences and evolve, as Desiree said at the beginning of this conversation. And I wonder if we're actually at a juncture, and I'm curious what this group thinks, of, you know, needing to really think, stop, and recalibrate through an original lens what our future holds. And I say this, you know, really related to, you know, things like, you know, the real estate sector. And right now we're in a supply crunch, right? We have a world population that's growing at unprecedented levels. We have a lack of supply across most of North America, but in fact, in a lot of places in the world. But the reality is this is a really short-term problem in the context of the world, right? We are actually in a place where the world population is likely to start receding. And so are we setting ourselves up based on history, based on past experience, based on what we know and access to information from the past at a record pace for an eventuality that is not actually going to exist? And I think from a preparing for the future context, this is what's been playing on my mind a little bit is, you know, are we setting ourselves up a little bit for failure because we are relying so much on past experience, past information, regardless of how it's served up to us? And so I'm curious, I love that you've positioned it this way, Chitra, because I've not really thought about it in this context, but it's given me a little bit more mind real estate to kind of, you know, think about this through. And so, I mean, I'd be curious what this group thinks, you know, just in that context, in terms of, you know, is this a short-term problem we're talking about? And are we really not looking at the right way to be thinking about how to prepare for the future?
Well said. Amazing points, Vanessa, Sharron, and Lynette. You know, listening to you, all three of you, what jumped out at me, connecting back to our topic of preparing for the future, is how do you develop that unique, authentic voice that cannot be mimicked by ChatGPT or its next incarnation or its subsequent incarnation and so on? I would love to hear from Tami and Teresa, who also joined us. Welcome, Teresa and Tami. So tell us, what do you think about what is it, how do we train ourselves to have that unique, original way of looking at the future, looking at anything in the world, so that it stands out and cannot be easily mimicked?
You know, I think one of the most important things is that we need leadership more than we've ever needed leadership in our lives. I think we're craving leadership. The country's polarized, the world is polarized, and you know, there's just so much opinion, and some of it is even copied. And I think when you look at true leadership, somebody that you are willing to follow, that is going to help raise you up to the next level, people want to see transparency. They want to see authenticity. There's a very big difference between transformational leadership, wanting to help transform people's lives, wanting to help transform the world, than there is in transactional leadership. And I'm concerned that GTP is much more towards transactional leadership. And, you know, I believe so strongly in being true to yourself. I actually have a tattoo on my back. I lost a bet. That's a different story for a different day. But, and it says, be true to yourself and you'll be able to lead others. And I think that you really need to be an authentic leader. And I hope this doesn't make people willing to just phone it in, because I think that there's a very big difference between happiness and fulfillment. And I don't think that you can be fulfilled if you're not living the future and preparing for the future that you want to have, not the one that you're just reacting to because of getting inundated with all this information. There's only three ways we can fail: not enough information or not accurate information, limiting beliefs, and distraction. And now this is another distraction, along with, I think people need to give themselves some blank spaces. For me personally, I book off 4 hours every single month to work on my life, not in it, to plan in advance business-wise, So that I'll plan halfway through the month, I'll plan to the end of the next month. So I overlap, plan 6 weeks in advance. How do I want these people to feel? What do I want to have transpire? Where am I going? How can I maximize on what that time is? Who are the people and what do they need where I'm going to go? And I'm going to continue to do that no matter what happens with everything else, because I think that it really does help. It's an action plan. And so it actually helps me stay rooted and stay glued to where it is I want to see things go, and where I think that I can be the most use or the most help to people. But I think I am seeing a lot of people just phone it in because there's just such easy access to this stuff. And I don't think that's going to give them any fulfillment or any satisfaction or any happiness. And so utilizing technology as a tool, to me, it's supposed to help us be able to touch more lives. It's supposed to help us with speed. It's supposed to help us with accuracy, but it's not supposed to replace us. And I think there's a certain fear factor in, I have a daughter that's a writer too, in the replacement theory of seeing things happen. But I know that almost everything that I've read in regard to ChatGPT, and when I read an article or a blog post, I can kind of tell because there's not the same level of emotion. That being said, I actually just witnessed a guy show, okay, write this like you do it towards an I personality, write this as you do it towards an S personality, write this as you do towards a D personality. And they were all completely different stories. And then it all of a sudden added warmth and added things into it that it made it seem a little more authentic. So I hope that everybody just utilizes it as a tool and they don't allow it to replace. I think that that will make people feel a lot emptier.
Teresa, I saw a
Yeah.
lot of nods, so
Yes.
yeah, love to hear.
I totally agree with Tami. I think it's definitely about, certainly leadership is really needed right now. And there's so many mixed feelings and emotions that happen when you see futuristic things now come to life, right? This was all there and now it's real. It's actually here. I actually love ChatGPT. I use it every day, and I use it because my strength has never been writing. I've never been a strong writer, and it's just struggled to write. And so, I've tested it out and thought, well, let me come up with, help me come up with a better way to say this. And it certainly helped me with a lot of the stuff that I have to do. The thing that is scary about ChatGPT is that now I ask it, Tami, to your point, I'll say, now that you know me, ChatGPT, would you please write this in the way that I actually sound? Because it's now taking the ChatGPT is taking what I say when I put it inside, how I say it, right? How do I phrase the words, or how do I ask the question, that it now has mimicked me, which is so scary because it comes out with the way that you write the question. It starts to write the way you actually speak. So from that personality, Tami, I think it's definitely and everyone else, that it's certainly changing, because it is thinking, ideally. But I have asked questions about organizations or events, and unless it's in real time, it won't know. Or if it's a personal experience, it won't know. And so I think at this point, we do not need to worry about the personal story and experience that each individual has. And when it comes to writing a description for a home, for example, it can give you the floral, the experience outside of the real senses of smell, of touch, of feel. It can't do that. And so when you're describing your home, it can't say my wall has every child's, the inches of when they were 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and their height and the experience that we had when my dad was living and when he was in this house. It will never be able to replace those memories that we have and those personal experiences, and also the way that we actually tell a story, for example, in real time, in that perspective. So I think it's amazing. I absolutely love it. I absolutely love all the different pieces that I mean, you know, for you, Chitra, your work, you know, all of the capabilities and the abilities of it being able to pull information that at one point we would have to take days to find, right? Or sometimes months to find, it can actually pull that information and make it easy and accessible quickly to you, which I think is really beneficial and helpful. But it's still not, you know, going to replace those personal, authentic stories that we have in every direction. And that's where I see it right now. That's what the future is. It's something that we can embrace, that we can use, that can make our lives a lot easier and save us time in the end. And it's certainly something that I feel very, you know, fulfilled, you know, Tami, about, because now I'm not taking 3 hours to write a paragraph that now takes minutes for me to use ChatGPT to help me design.
And I'm hoping that that's exactly, Teresa, what the way people use it, right? That it frees up more time so that you can be in focus on your A priorities. It can take the B, C, and D priorities out of your way so you can focus on A. But I have a feeling that there are going to be some people that are going to use it as a replacement, whether they're in college or, you know, writing a term paper or doing other things. I think that some people will look at it that it's literally that I can just phone it in now. And I'd like to see it be used so that I can do more research in less time, and that I can have the speed so that I can actually have a more
Your
fulfilled.
own thought process, right? Your own words into it. And I do think that you have to, like, when you have to tweak it. You have to say, oh, that's not what, oh, let me rewrite this so that it's more me, right? I think in that sense.
Yeah. But I
Totally
do
agree
think
with
there are people that are literally using it as a replacement, which I don't think is a healthy place to be.
And especially important, more important is people do not use that replacement, possibility as a way to change the economics of our output and productivity and creativity. One thing that came through, this is this uniqueness, the authenticity, right? So for me, I would love to hear how you manifest authenticity, because authenticity prepares us well for the future. That's coming loud and clear, because that goes to being true to oneself. So for me, authenticity is practicing what I say, so that when people hear, they know, they believe that what is coming out of what I'm talking about is experience born, and that I preach what I practice, and there is truth to it, and so on. What about you? I would love to hear what do you see when you look at the leaders that you follow? How do they manifest authenticity? What do you see as signals of or evidence of authenticity in yourself or in the people whom you work with?
Chitra, before you start that, could I answer Lynette's question real quick, if you don't mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
So 2 things real quick. So Sharron made I thought, incredible comment about the water down of critical thinking. I am 100% behind that. Like, there's no other. And then also there was the thought of the human element of the storytelling that both Teresa and Tami have really hit in hard is that, and I'll lead this into the other part, but back to Lynette, your comment about, what you think is the difference between, I look at leadership and influencers as very different to where, what Tami was tying into. But then because we're looking at, the repetitiveness of an influencer just going after you and after you, or a leader, leaders need leaders, because the fact is that, no one has ever experienced what we're experiencing now. So we all need to have, and this, one of the reasons, the sharing of this group of the NDILC. The other thing is that, to your point, Lynette, what do I think of the future with the real estate dynamics, the growth spurt and everything else is that I have been really digesting this for a long time, for several years, is that we have to redesign the cities. We look at, where education is that the education, we're back in the 1960s. You go to get a degree and can really get you a job based on what we see out there, except certain verticals are doing well. But the idea is that if you look at our cities, we're fixing a little component here, a little component here, a little component, but all we're doing is banding it. We have to go back and redesign what that city needs to be framed out for many. And each city doesn't have that infrastructure or the knowledge or the people to understand how to even do that. So I think that's the biggest problem in real estate, whether we look at our space, whether we look at our, of our mind or our land or our water. And that's where that ties into the human element that everyone's talking about, of the authenticity of the feeling of love. You think about homeownership as a sanctuary. Everything that Teresa just talked about is really of the love of those four walls, of that uniqueness that happens in there. And I look at that as my personal, my failures, my inability to speak clearly, or the thought process goes wild, or all the things that I failed at. But that is the joy that people see, that they get to open up in their heart to me, that I'm able to get them to grow and be more happy in their life as where they go, because we can then bond. So I look at it as a great way as a connection for me, versus on a negative to me, even though I have my own insecurities. So I just want to put that out there before just this question.
Yeah, you can continue, good, Desiree, reflecting on my question.
The authenticity for me is the question is that, I look at it is that if you don't show, when you go out, we all put on our makeup or we do something to put on a facade. I have had a belief for my entire life that I date every single person I meet, that you get what you get. I'm not different when I go home or I go somewhere else. We are on a date, whether it be platonic, whether it be, professional, personal, whatever. And so the idea is that if I'm true to myself and when I speak to you, whether you like it or not, you're going to immediately know and understand who I am. And for me, that shows all my, okay, well, why you talk about this and why you talk about that? Well, I don't want something to creep up on you and not know about it. So for me to keep it authentic in the story of my realism is going to me to where you're going to know that you can count on me when the going gets tough, versus then it always being there when things are positive.
Who wants to go next?
I'm going to take a stab at this, and because I'm thinking as I'm speaking, please excuse me if I sound inarticulate. But I think in discerning whether someone is an authentic leader requires us, in some measure, to distinguish and differentiate between information and knowledge. Now, information, can be knowledge, but with the preponderance of internet sources that we have today that just bombard us with information, I think people oftentimes confuse the two. Information to me is what comes into my head, through one ear and goes out the next. I don't retain it. Knowledge, on the other hand, I think could be information, but it's what we do with it. How do we learn from it? How do we apply it to particular situations in such a way that you can actually tailor it to the needs of that situation? What are the consequences of taking a particular route using the knowledge that you have? That is not information, right? Information doesn't have the sort of applicability that I think knowledge has. You can use knowledge, you can use information too, but not to the extent that you can use knowledge or should use knowledge as a leader. Now, that said, knowledge is growth, right? We learn every day as we experience things. And so a leader, an authentic leader to me has, frankly, I think the biggest criterion for a leader is humility. And if you're humble enough as a leader, then you will know that you're growing when you acquire not necessarily information, but knowledge and how you use it in the given situation and circumstance in which you find yourself. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
I think it makes great sense. I think that there's a big difference between information and knowledge, and I will take it a step further and take it to wisdom. And wisdom comes from experience, right? And then you develop that expertise because you have experience and you've had enough experience in that area so that everyone can tell that this is from a position of experience, not because I just read it, not because I just absorbed it. I literally lived it in some way, shape, or form. And I think that that is a huge difference. So that I do believe that we'll notice that in certain people, but I think that it's so important for a leader to not just have humility, but also to continue to grow, because you have to, no one's going to follow you if you're not continuing to grow, and how much you're pouring into other people. And I don't think that you can do that without it being authentic. I don't think that people will feel it the same if it's not genuine and it's not authentic. And I think being true to yourself, for me personally, I think that leading from a position of love makes a huge difference. And I don't know how much you can feel of that by just gaining information. I think that it really has to be in how you apply that to whomever you're working with right now, that you're right in front of that person and you're pouring into that person, you're hearing what they have to say, and you're applying what it is that you know to be able to help them grow to the next level, or help be understanding about what it is that they're facing right now. And I don't think that you can get that from this. So hopefully it just helps you have more reference points, and not that it replaces anything.
Thanks for supporting my thoughts, Tami.
And
Listening to you both, I saw the connection, Sharron and Tami. Tami talked about this transformational leadership. Sharron, when you talked about knowledge has the power to transform, whereas information more frequently doesn't, because of just the sheer volume of it. Whereas knowledge, so any leader with the power to transform, power to have that impact, that's where I saw a beautiful connection between what Tami started as saying, the transformational leadership versus transactional leadership. So it's a beautiful thought. What about Teresa? How do you keep yourself authentic?
Oh, well, first of all, I totally agree with Sharron and with Tami, right? It's so true. And Desiree, I think it's really critical when you almost know when somebody's authentic. We all know, like we can all tell an authentic leader in many ways, whether or not they have the experiences that tells the story that they've actually lived the life that they talk about. So, I mean, one of the things that I really love and respect, and I know Kelly's not on the call today, is that, for example, UPS. I mean, if you look at the corporation UPS, most of their leaders started from the ground up, right? They actually rode the trucks. They actually delivered the packages that are important for every day, which is the real true of that organization. That's what we do. Most of the best leaders, in my opinion, in the real estate business, have experienced actual real estate, the transactions, working from the ground up, knowing and understanding what an agent goes through, what the consumer does, so that they can really relate and be authentic when they're talking and putting and implementing programs or making decisions that affect the whole. And I think a lot of times we forget that. We forget that when somebody has done the work, then they become authentic when they're leading an organization that they're supposed to be an expert in, right? That's what I see a leader having, that experience, that knowledge, that actual personal, tragedies or opportunities or successes that really make it real. I mean, I look at the movie, I'm a big movie buff, Wall Street, okay? If you look at Wall Street, you remember the guy that was actually the heart of that, the firm, right? Telling Charlie Sheen, this is, hey, you're gonna learn, you don't always follow the big elephant, right? This is how you really make it in this business, by being genuine and by really caring about people, not following the money. And in the end, he's the one that really comes to fruition, right? His leadership is the one that really counts the most. So I think for the most part, I think that's what makes a great authentic leader. That's how I try to lead. It's always better when you've done something. And if you haven't done it, that you're open and humble, like Sharron say, about that humility is part of that, but to also be able to express and also gain respect through that knowledge. And one thing I want to mention, so for example, Christy Budnick is our CEO with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. And I know, Tami, you know Christy. And so she was just on stage. And one thing she shared with all of us was that before she became, you know, the leader, she knew she had to do public speaking. And she said, I was literally afraid to even open my mouth. I was so scared to get in front of anyone. And for her to share that with our audiences, with thousands of people that were there, it just made her so genuine and so authentic that she would express how scared she was. And even she goes, I had to practice and practice and practice to be comfortable, and look at what I'm doing today. And she goes, as I'm thinking about it, I'm getting scared again. So it was so amazing that she shared that humility and also authenticity about herself that made her human. And I think that's the biggest thing, is when we become human and not try to be a hero or super giant. That's what a great leader looks like to me.
Yeah. I also love those stories and journeys, Teresa. For me, through that you learn so much when you hear the journey people have taken and how they have grown. Rather than I was here in, you know, point A and now I'm at point C. There's nothing to learn from just hearing the success stories. It's always the failures for me, and how they navigated through the failures are very telling and very inspirational. Lynette, Vanessa, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much here that resonates so highly with me, and you know, I can't help but sit back and chuckle a little bit, because this exact conversation is so relevant in my life right now, but in a very different facet. And you know, we're just getting to know each other all here, ladies, and so I don't want to make any assumptions, but I'm going to guess that one or two of you are probably in the most important leadership role of all, which is as a mother. And so, you know, this is the conversation I'm having right now with, I have two daughters, a 28-year-old and a 13-year-old, but the discussion around this with my 13-year-old, and, you know, when you talk about authenticity, I want to come back to where Sharron leaned in around information and knowledge and that trajectory. Tami layered on wisdom. Again, you know, this is really the opportunity and the privilege that we all have, is to share with our kids sort of how to handle that transformative leadership, right? And I think the ultimate test around authenticity is how we do that with our own kids. Man, there is nobody who holds you more accountable and keeps you humble than your children if you're not showing up authentically. And, you know, so the conversation with my 13-year-old who we've elected to homeschool is really around this, because her gut feel, and this is, you know, I think a big piece of the transformative leadership that I'm learning through right now along with her, is it doesn't feel right, Mom. Taking information in does not make me feel like I am becoming somebody that I want to be or I know I can be. I need the knowledge. I want to create knowledge, right? And I want to have an environment in which knowledge is rewarded, not the retention or the regurgitation of information. To your point, Sharron, it's exactly how she described it. Mom, it's like in one ear and out the other. And if I don't keep it there long enough to get it on the test, like, what does that say, you know? But it's more about the process that you really identified, Tami, that I think has allowed me to lean into this authentic leadership for her and other people that I am leading in a professional capacity. And it's helping them understand that it's important to have a system that allows you to convert information into knowledge. And information into knowledge, and thus into wisdom, is really around having a system that you can utilize. I do something similar. I have a monthly kind of planning. I sit down with myself and authentically check in with where I want to be, who I want to influence, that sort of impact that I want to have, which includes my family and my children, but it also includes my professional world. And that system has allowed me to impart on not just my daughter, but some of my work environments, that it's important to create knowledge. And knowledge is what puts you in those positions of influence, helping people. And it's that authenticity, right, to check in. And I think this process with my daughter is probably the most humbling piece, because I'm learning along with her. You know, Teresa, you just said you need to kind of learn, you need to be in the trenches. You know, I'm not a teacher. I don't know what homeschooling looks like, but what I know is I want to empower my daughter to have the ability to go into the world, not at 12th grade, not at 11th grade, not through college. I want her to go into the world genuinely being authentic and understanding how to gain knowledge and having a system to apply that knowledge to make a big impact in whatever the way that means to her, right? And I think as authentic leaders, it's learning how to do that alongside the people that you want to lead, and being humble to say, like, in some ways, yeah, I'm going to share my experiences and show up to help you do that. But I'm also going to learn alongside you, and together we may fail. I might actually trip up more than you do, and you might get ahead of me in this process, but that's okay, because we're giving each other space to do it. And I feel, to me, that that is more of the type of leadership that this society is craving and wants, is the grow with me, give me space, enable me, but do it with me, right? Don't be the person that's a step ahead and that always, you feel like you always have to be ahead. Just kind of block and tackle for me, because that's what I want. I want my kids to do way better. And if I can block and tackle for the people that come behind me in my organization, or for my kids, or for the people that, you know, I love and respect in my work environment, I feel like that, to me, is authenticity, is, you know, doing what I can to enable others to grow bigger and better.
May I add something to that before? So to that point, very, very excellently and well said, Lynette. And what I perceive your daughter to be saying is that she doesn't just want the information, she wants the knowledge. Gaining knowledge is almost painful, right? It is, there's a physical manifestation, and gaining knowledge to me is growing, and I equate them to be the same. And there is a physical manifestation to growth. So, you know, I've taken a lot of these leadership courses and so on and so on. One that actually resonated with me over the last decades is that growth is shown in a graphic where there are concentric circles. And when you're within a particular circle, it means that you're in your comfort zone. Breaking out of a particular concentric circle and into the next sphere means that you actually are growing, right? And you feel it, especially with women. We tend to feel it sort of in the pits of our stomachs that, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. And women always feel we don't know enough. We never know enough, and we're never prepared. But you feel that there. And so I remember going back to college, where I was writing my first sociology paper, and it was physically painful for me to have to come up with the original thoughts. And I'm dating myself because this was in 1977. You know, no internet, nothing of the sort, except for the encyclopedias, the Britannica. You'd have to go to the library and do that. So sitting there and writing original thinking, which progressed over the years and got to be sort of a little easier with the internet, bringing resources to your fingertips, has helped me grow. And this is where I, you know, bring up the critical thinking that I mentioned earlier. It's all connected. You grow, you feel that pain, you develop more critical thinking skills, you develop more knowledge, you put them to use, and then you continue doing the same thing over and over. So you never stop honing the knowledge that you're getting, the growth that you're experiencing, and the application of all of that to how you are as a leader.
Sharron, it physically hurts. Yeah, my head hurts with the original stuff, right? That's literally true. So I know I'm looking at the clock, and I'm going to invite Vanessa. Vanessa, you have the benefit of having listened to so many amazing thoughts about authenticity. But you have the opportunity to bring it all together. And
I mean, Sharron, Lynette, thank you for joining this team. We are impressed with your answers, your authenticity. Just a welcome addition to this wonderful team already. But too much is given, much is, you know, you have to also expect. And to me, authenticity is critical. But to your point, Sharron, sometimes you feel it's visceral, you know, you get like a headache, you get attention, you're like, oh my God. Yes, you have to be authentic and you have to be that voice for others when you have that leadership role. And it's not always an easy journey. It's not. Sometimes you have to put in those punching gloves and you're out there because you have to be the voice for the underserved or the voice of the community. And every one of us have our own feel, but you know that you have to be that speaker for the unspoken, because that is our role as well. And it is difficult. It is difficult sometimes to go against the grain of how this is the company, the way it's been done, or the company has a certain metrics, or there's certain profitability behind it. But that is why we are here, to make a difference and an impact and be the voice for others to have a better experience and a better opportunity. And for me, it's been, right now, it's been a wonderful role that I'm doing in community. But again, it's come with a lot of challenges where you have to be that leader, be authentic, then also show the proof. This is why we need to do this. And sometimes it's not easy. It's not easy. It's very challenging. And I wake up with a stress headache thinking, oh my God, now what? Now here's my next challenge. I have to keep fighting the fight because we are that voice. We have to be authentic and be the speaker for those that can't speak, because we know that we can make an impact to make this world better. For me, it's home ownership, bringing in more homeowners. And I want to bring in more generational wealth, but sometimes it's challenging. It is challenging. So you have to be out there and be the voice for others so others have an opportunity. That's my 2 cents for today.
Thank you, Vanessa. So we are about to wrap up this session. So since we invited OpenGPT, I thought we'll end with it a unique way. So right before the session or webinar began, I actually asked ChatGPT to give us a song about preparing for the future. So it gave you can see in the screen if I say scroll up. But what struck me, which is so relevant to our discussion is the last, and the future in my sight, I lead with power, love, and my might. In this world of endless dreams, we will find our way. Together, we'll shape the future, come what may. So I love being part of this council. Amazing thoughts. Thank you for being here today. Back to you, Desiree.
Thank you. This has been incredible, and what a wake up for coming from the dead of COVID. So this is unbelievable. So Erica has sent a piece in, said, let the ladies know them. I'm in spirit, attempting to solve world problems, inject common sense one day at a time. So to the point of everything, it just sums everything up what we talked about. So thank you again, Sharron and Lynette, for joining, everyone making the time and fighting through their schedules to be on the call. We are going to end, and thank you, Chitra, for always bringing and injecting new things, and preparing for the future is always the greatest thing on going. Next month is going to be lead by example. Inclusion is enough. Press for parity and strive for excellence in everything, which really leads on to the next thing we're summing. So I want to thank everyone. Have an incredible day. Please be safe, stay healthy. And again, this will be out there so everyone can view for those who didn't get to see it. And from the bottom of my heart, hugs to everyone. And thank you again for being on.
And hope you recover fully.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.